Well, speaking of self-diagnosing, have you ever taken one of those like personality tests online, or maybe one that's supposed to show what your learning style or working style or whatever is?
Yes, I think I'm an FART, I think. Good.
Okay, so where are we going with all this? When I first started recording this group of episodes, I took my first trip to the Rollinsford Public Library. This place is 100% classic small-town library, right down to the rubber stamp and sticker-based tracking system, and the, some might say comically, limited selection. I got 2 books for podcast research, and they told me I was the first person to check either of them out ever. I skimmed them both while in a hospital waiting room for 5 hours. The first one was called On Fiction, and I don't remember any of it. The second one was called Conversations with Screenwriters, and I picked it up because, you know, it looked like it was kind of a mid-90s book, and it struck me as the kind of impulse that will be channeled today into a podcast. The only name that I recognized on the front of the book, the only listed conversation, was Frank Darabont, who doesn't strike me as a very good writer anyway, but I got into it, and I realized I didn't know any of the names because these are people who wrote movies in the 90s, and they probably all live, like, full-time on yachts now. They were writers and creators at a time when art and commerce struggled more quietly with each other, and, you know, they wrote shitty Gwyneth Paltrow movies and didn't give a fuck about anything. Maybe I'm generalizing. Anyway, I took some notes. So one of them was Richard Curtis, and I'm just realizing now that Richard Curtis went on to write and direct About Time, which is one of the greatest movies ever. But in the shitty 90s, Richard Curtis, he was getting so much work, so many early George Clooney vehicles, that he apparently knew what he was going to be writing, like the movies he would be working on, for the next, like, year and a half at the time of the interview. Now, I know I'm not a planner, but that does not strike me as a good idea. Like, how can you summon enthusiasm for something you agreed to write a year before? Then I read one with Ron Bass, who wrote What Dreams May Come on a dare, I'm assuming. And he says in his interview that he couldn't work a computer. And isn't it funny that in the 90s and even into the aughts among, like, certain subsets of the NPR crowd, that not being able to work a computer was like a signifier of coolness and authenticity? How weird is that? And how weird is it that Jonathan Franzen still thinks that's true? So there was one question that the interviewer kept asking every writer, which I liked as a question, but I was never satisfied with the answer, was, what do you remember reading as a child? It's one of those questions that seems very deep and might get at the inherent rosebuddiness of a person. But it never really does, because as kids, everybody reads the same thing. Was Roald Dahl part of your, like, childhood reading experience?
A little bit, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah? It didn't go, like, super far? Like,
no, like, it was mostly just James and the Giant Peach.
Into his back catalog?
No, it was mostly just James. James and that fucking peach. Was that the name of the book? James and the fucking peach.
I read there was a Roald Dahl book that was about like a vicar who was dyslexic, and so, you know, he kept saying, like, dog instead of God. That was basically the joke.
Oh, wow. Good premise.
I remember that being like this real, it was like a Roald Dahl deep cut, and we had to order it from the bookstore, especially. And then I read it on the drive back home from the bookstore, and my mom was like, what? It ended up being a very short book, because, I mean, how many jokes are there about a vicar who is dyslexic? He accidentally calls God a dog during a sermon, and he accidentally calls a dog a god on the street after the sermon. That's the end of the story, basically. Now, it probably goes without saying, I'm a really big fan of The West Wing. And as such, I have been deeply enjoying Rishi Hirway and Josh Molina's podcast, The West Wing Weekly. Although, if I were to start a podcast about The West Wing, I think I would probably call it something like Post Hoc Ergo Podcast Hoc. I'm pretty behind on episodes, but I just listened to their recap of 20 Hours in LA, which is a Season 1 episode, which contains, I believe, the worst joke that Aaron Sorkin ever wrote in his life.
But my least favorite joke in the episode is when Joey Lucas and Josh are talking, and she says,
Vox populi, vox Dei.
The voice of the people is the voice of a dog.
The voice of God, Russell.
God.
That's silly.
I hate that joke for a lot of reasons, but mostly I think it's because there is no way that someone could mistranslate the Latin word for God into the word for dog. It just doesn't track as a mistranslation.
That didn't really track for me either.
Yeah.
The only way it tracks is if you, the writer, in this case Aaron Sorkin, are operating under the assumption that you are the only person in the world who knows anything about how Latin works, which strikes me as something Aaron Sorkin could be operating under the assumption of. I don't know, just thinking about that joke makes my skin crawl a little bit, and of course, I'm wary of that old saying, and I think it even applies to bad jokes, that, dissecting a joke is like dissecting a frog. You can do it, but the frog dies. That's a saying, actually, that occurred to me recently when I was reading, through my eyes reddened with rage, this Atlantic hot take that was called, Hillary Clinton's appearance on Between Two Ferns was not brave. First of all, nobody said it was brave. So this article, which I have a hard time even calling an article, I want to be like snotty Aaron Sorkin-y and call it like this blog post, basically goes joke by joke through the Zach Galifianakis sketch and explains why it's either not funny or at the expense of someone other than Hillary Clinton. And it was upsetting just because I have always revered the Atlantic as an institution. I had an English teacher in high school named Mrs. Brewitt, and she got all of her students a subscription to the Atlantic. And each month, we would read a few articles and write about them and discuss them in class. And, it was my first experience with feeling impossibly sophisticated. It was the closest that my life was resembling the West Wing at the time. And so much of those reading and writing and discussing experiences were formative to me. To see the Atlantic brought low by the need for page views and by the need for the appearance of equivalence and whatever else the fuck is going on. It sucks. This election sucks. This media landscape sucks.
Anyone can tell you there's no more road to ride. Everyone will tell you there's no place to hide.
I never got a job at like a record store. I kind of feel like I would have been good at that kind of thing.
Man, me too. I want that.
But we're too young to have had that line in our resume. I would like to be that arbiter of coolness at the record store. I'd like to be that guy behind the counter, and when someone comes up with a couple of cool albums, be like, yeah, this is good stuff. You know? That's a great... That still happens sometimes when I go down to the record store in Portsmouth. If I have like a couple of really cool selections, the guy behind the counter is like, cool. And that gives you like such a pride boost. You can walk around with that for like a month.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, and I just think I would like to be that person.
It definitely raises your core body temperature by a little bit. Feel real warm. It's nice.
The problem is now if you want to be that person or if you want to get that, you mostly have to get it online, and I think it's sort of it's diffused a lot,
Right.
Like there are people online, people that you follow on Twitter, people that whatever that you like think of as cool. Not necessarily famous people, but just people that are like, this is a cool person.
Sure.
And if you get like a fave on the tweet or whatever from one of those people, it's like a tiny, tiny little version of the same thing. The record store guy approving. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It doesn't. You can't carry it around for a week. It lasts 10 minutes.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's just kind of like, and it doesn't feel like it's going to last for 10 minutes, but then all of a sudden you find yourself like doing something else and not thinking about it, and then that's that.
I guess it's like of a piece with the fact that mostly the internet it's like micro interactions. Mm-hmm. So everything that you would get, micro interactions. It's a positive one, Mm-hmm. But everything that you would get from a regular conversation, whether somebody's complimenting you or flirting with you or insulting you or anything, the effect of it is It's way smaller.
Yes.
Than if someone were to do it in real life. But there's so many of them that maybe sometimes they accumulate to like, something that works. I don't know.
Yeah, to something that you can carry around for a month, though it may be 1,000 instead of one of them.
I wanted to bring up, if I could, I think we should make it clear to anybody that we do not know each other at all.
That is true.
I mean, is that appropriate to say, I think? Maybe we
I mean, that's fine. I have literally never interviewed anyone other than, one friend and my brother. Everyone else I've ever talked to on this podcast, I've never met.
I just thought it was interesting because I feel like there's a whole section of the internet of people I only know through the internet, but I know them so much more than I know a lot of people that I see, I think, at like parties and stuff. Because
that's because people don't talk truthfully or at all, really, at like parties.
And nobody texts me like about what they're having for lunch anymore.
Mm-hmm. And people don't like go on sort of early morning long rants about their feelings and stuff like people do on Twitter. So you don't get that in real life.
Yeah, like Trump's a better friend to me than any of my actual friends.
I mean, we've been granted unprecedented access to the brain of a presidential candidate, and it's a good thing we never got to see this before, because now we know. It's all just like rolling marbles and screaming mice and boiling water in there.
So Sally can wait. She knows it's too late as we're walking on by. Her soul slides away. But don't look back in anger, I heard you say.
We think a lot about how the internet is killing everything, but when I think back about that book of interviews, I think about how the internet is actually in some ways saving things like books by creating a release valve for a lot of bullshit. Conversations with screenwriters, they go on podcasts now, but also like the rambling blogs and Snapchat accounts of famous people. Think about it. Like 20 years ago, that impulse would have had to become a book. And think about all the shitty male aggression that's being bled out in comment sections and on Twitter now, instead of like thousands of Bret Easton Ellis knockoff novels. Novelty books are mostly websites now, and sure, some novelty websites become books again because nobody gets away totally clean. But the books that still come out now, for the most part, are real books. We're still writing great American novels and great trashy novels, and people are still carrying around copies of them. Cassette tapes may have died, and headphone jacks may be on their way, and now we can pay for things with our phones, and those debit cards with the chips seem to be designed to make sure that all of us switch to our phones out of spite very soon, and maybe nobody will own a car in 20 years, but like books are holding on. And maybe part of that reason is we don't have to sort through as much bullshit at the local bookstore anymore, or at the Amazon.com inexplicable physical locations. Like I said, nobody gets away clean. Nothing ever totally makes sense. Another thing the internet did was splinter mass markets into niche markets, which led to what I guess we've all agreed to call the era of peak TV. Like, did I miss the meeting when we all decided to start using that term? Was that also the same meeting where we all consented to splitting all TV seasons in half? What the fuck? One of the questions I wrote down at the beginning of this group of episodes was, is TV the new great American novel? Then I never asked anybody because I decided that was a stupid question. No, TV is not the new great American novel. TV is still TV. Also, I didn't want to talk about peak TV with anybody because I thought everyone would yell at me because I quit Breaking Bad at the end of season 3. I'm sorry, but that show is too much of a bummer for me and I can't handle it. Don't at me. But anyway, while we're on the subject of all of this, I decided a few days ago that Mad Men was my favorite TV show of all time. So I recorded a little podcast bit about it, and then I tried to hazily connect it to a little bit I had about Chopped. Let's listen. My favorite television show is Mad Men. Favorite one of all time. And I can say that with relative certainty. Favorite movie? I don't know. Favorite song? Changes every 6 weeks. I think right now it's probably Texas Funeral by Hopalong. But anyway, I loved The Wire and Friday Night Lights and The West Wing and 6 Feet Under were really important aspects of my development as a young man, and I feel like Parks and Recreation sort of helped me stay afloat in my sort of depressed mid-20s. But Mad Men is objectively the one. And I think that's because tone is more important to me than story or characters. It's why I'm learning that as a writer I have a lot of work to do, because other people, like audiences, are really focused on the story and the characters, and not just what they're saying and how it feels. And not even whether or not what they're saying makes sense, just like what vibe the words have. You know, that's what I think about. But anyway, Mad Men had this total mastery of tone. When a Mad Men episode started in a weird way and you weren't sure what was going on, it was exciting and interesting. Unlike, say, The Walking Dead, where anytime a story starts in media res or God forbid in black and white, you know you're going to be spending like a full hour rolling your eyes so hard that you're going to feel drunk when you go to sleep. It was always clear that Mad Men was in control. I love that episode of Mad Men that starts with a Decemberists song, which is, of course, anachronistic, but in a really confusing way, because the Decemberists are so old-timey. But just to start with a modern indie rock song in a historical setting is to fuck with your audience in a way that shows extreme confidence. It was a thrilling choice. You know, it's one that I've come to associate with a show at the height of its powers. For another example of that move, see the use of the Hold Steady in Game of Thrones. I mean, really, hands off to those guys for that scene. Now, I know that a lot of Mad Men's moves, particularly their jarring atonal endings, I mean, I can, off the top of my head, think of 2 different Mad Men episodes that end with somebody abruptly vomiting. I know that a lot of that stuff is straight from The Sopranos playbook, and I suspect that The Sopranos might rival Mad Men if I just got around to watching it again, but the thing is, I don't rewatch anything anymore. I mostly just watch Chopped.
I'm just trying to connect with something bad. Yeah.
Okay, I love Chopped. I buy whole seasons of Chopped on iTunes with reckless disregard for my finances, and I burn through them at a rate that is, for me, very fast, which is actually to say, about 1 season a month. I'm not a binge watcher by any stretch of the imagination, but we're not talking about my viewing habits right now. We're talking about why I love Chopped, and why I love Chopped despite the fact that I'm not much of a fan of other cooking competition shows. And that's not just because of the very powerful crush I have on Manit Chauhan. I think it's because of the central ironies of Chopped. Chopped is a deeply, thrillingly ironic show, okay? Now, the most celebrated irony of Chopped is the way that, contrary to most reality shows, the sob stories from contestants are not rewarded, and in fact are often brutally punished. If you hear somebody explain why Chopped will help them feel validated by their recently deceased father, they're gonna lose in the next round. Did you recently survive cancer? It doesn't matter, because there wasn't enough brightness and acidity in your appetizer. Did you just burst into tears because you don't get to spend enough time with your kids? Well, maybe you should have fucking cried into your soup because it desperately needed salt. Get the fuck out of here. It's a product of the editing necessities of the show, I think. And actually, I take Ted Allen at his word on this. The judges don't factor the stories in at all, but the show likes to include them. So if you get chopped in the first round, all your drama has to fit in those first 15 minutes before everybody forgets about you. A lot of the irony in Chopped is a product of the editing, and not all of it is out of structural necessity. Chopped editors will hang you out to dry, man. If they get you to talk like very cockily about how bad everybody else is and how much you deserve to win, they will show that clip 10 seconds before you are fucking utterly humiliated on a national stage. It is savage. I love it. And some of the irony comes from learning the beats of the show when you watch it as much as I do. You know, you learn those editing tendencies as well as like the habits of the judges. At this point, Christy and I know it too well. Like, if they give you a basket ingredient and you just grind it up for texture, or you put it on the plate as a garnish, you are fucked. You idiot! You're putting it on the plate as a garnish? And oh my god, like if you so much as look at a bottle of sesame oil, you might as well just cut one of your fingers off while you're at it, because you are DOA. One time we watched somebody pour like 4 ounces of sesame oil into a pan on Chopped, and we both screamed at the TV like it was a horror movie, or like my mom watching The Patriots. And there's also just, surprisingly often, a very real and well-cultivated sense of doom on Chopped. Like, if somebody forgets a basket ingredient in the first round but survives in the second round, they're gonna do it again. Almost every time. It is Shakespearean, some of these fuck-ups. But my favorite irony of Chopped comes at the very end. After the last round, one of the two final contestants loses, and the judges spend a while telling that person why they've lost. And the winner has to just stand there, unable to celebrate yet, even though they know they've won. And sometimes, if the editors are being kind to us, they'll cut to that winner, trying to contain their joy, out of respect for the recently chopped, but maybe not doing a great job of it. I love those moments. It's a positive irony. It's a shining beacon that cuts through all of the brutality of Chopped. You work through it to get to that beautiful little morsel. But I kind of like the brutality too. And I really love Ted Allen. I could talk about Chopped for an entire episode, but I won't for now. Yeah, so I now, because I haven't updated my operating system in years, I gotta do that, and then I'm gonna lose the ability to use Final Cut, I think. So I'm gonna have to learn Adobe, but that's kind of fun because I feel like I've reached the end of the runway as far as things I can do or ideas I can have with Final Cut.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my ideas are based a lot on the technology that I have to work with. And so now I think, all right, well, let's just throw everything out and kind of start with something new, and see,
freshen it up a little bit.
Things that I make will probably be bad for a while, but I'll find my way back.
Sure.
It hasn't gotten the technology in the world of all that stuff hasn't gotten far enough away from me that I can't catch up still.
Right.
It's not like video games. Video games are way beyond me now.
They are advancing so fast. I actively play them, and I feel still that I'm not with it at all, which is funny. I think I don't know what it is, but I love games from 2007 or some shit. I just I just can't exit that era. I just keep playing them.
Yeah. Well, pretty soon you're going to be, some video game's going to come out, and it's going to be so complicated, and then you're going to, look up a YouTube tutorial of, an 11-year-old kid just absolutely mangling it, just out of control good.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, that's who it's for, I guess. It's at some point, the people that design these things have to stop thinking about the older users and just kind of cut them loose. It's really grim.
It is. It's funny. I'm borrowing this controller right now. It's a PC controller, and look at this fucking thing. These are touchpads.
Oh my god!
And look, there's
totally out of it.
There are two buttons here on the back.
Yeah.
This is no fucking joke. This thing. Yeah. What? It's nuts.
I remember when I saw. Okay, when I got a VHS tape in the mail from Nintendo when N64 was coming out.
Club Nintendo, baby.
I saw that controller and I thought, how on earth could I ever master that?
I only have two hands.
Yeah. And then I did, and I thought, okay, wow, I can handle anything. And then, I stopped playing video games, and I went to somebody's house, and they had Halo, and I tried to play it for about 30 seconds, and was, motion sick and confused.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, how did that get away from me so fast?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, gaming channels, which you do.
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with the conventions of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are doing it, and you are, you play and you also talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So are you just talking about what you are doing on the screen, or does it kind of wander off?
I mean, there's no set rules, but I feel like wandering off is the best way to do it. I feel like it's been on YouTube long enough that if you're playing it and just talking about what's in front of you, that shit's boring. Yeah. Right. I just, I can't make videos like that anyway. I'm kind of weird, so I have to I prefer to play video games and then try to break them and then laugh at them and then upload that. Make the games look bad. I prefer that. That's fun to me.
Uh-huh.
I like that.
Well, it's curious to me because I like that when you're showing basically a video game that you're playing, you're surrendering so much of what's going on in the video to other creators, other creative forces other than yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're just this kind of you're kind of just this interloper who's both controlling some of what's happening, but also talking about things. And despite the fact that I don't really watch video gaming channels, I am really compelled by the idea because I think, wow, there's a lot of potential there because so much of it is determined ahead of time. So much of what is going to happen is determined, and then the rest of it is like, who knows? Anything could happen.
There are so many levels in that. It's nuts. I mean, if you think about just if you back out even more, like, okay, just creating a game, not even playing it, but creating one. Like in a movie, if you want someone to experience certain emotions, it's predetermined, it's set up, and the people are going to care about this character, and then the character is going to do this, or this is going to happen to the character. But in a game, it's like, as a programmer, you have to think about, like, okay, they're going to make the character do whatever they want, but I still want them to feel this way about the story. I'm like, I can't even comprehend that. Big props to game designers. That's nuts.
Well, yeah, it's like quantum storytelling or something, and you can imagine the first set of changes, like if this happens, then this happens, then this happens. But over a long enough story, it can get so far out, and you have to keep track of so many similar threads.
Yeah. What if they do this instead? Then these 5 hours are different. Like, holy shit.
And I hear people talk about video games sort of being like emotionally moving and stuff sometimes, and I just think, wow, if somebody can do that, that's
yeah. I've absolutely been moved by games, like I have other mediums. It's real. But
it's one of those things that makes me think I should get back into playing video games or try to, but I also just think I would turn around and be like, I'm 40. Like I would lose 10 years. That's the problem.
That's some real shit.
Yeah. So now I have to actively choose to stay away. I have to get my enjoyment elsewhere, I guess. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that, okay, if I can't get that means I have to get more out of books that I read,
sure,
movies that I watch, that sort of thing. I have to get more out of it.
Yeah.
Because there's all this storytelling and being emotionally moved energy out there, you know, and people are getting it, and I gotta a couple of the portal doors where I don't know what I'm imagining. I'm imagining a room. There's a room and there's these tubes, and through the tubes comes, emotion and feeling, and in little blocks that I can eat,
Sure.
But the problem is, in the room that I'm in, a couple of those tubes are just like cemented off, and I know there's emotion coming in there, and it's just getting blocked up against the cement.
Your emotion rations are just building up like a clogged artery.
So if I ever got that cement out of there, there'd be too much, be too much emotion cubes to eat.
You might drown.
So instead, I just gotta let it stay sealed, and I just have to enjoy the emotion cubes that are coming in through the tubes that aren't blocked.
But people from their other rooms can tell you about it, and so you at least know what's going on.
Yeah,
you're not in the dark by any means.
Way.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll watch a video or something. I'll watch a YouTube
sure.
gaming channel thing sometime.
There are times where I will instead of purchasing a game, I will just watch it because that's the decision I can make, and it's fine. And I don't feel like I missed out. I don't feel like I don't know, like it was the worst decision. But
that's like sometimes if there's a horror movie that I don't really want to see, I'll just read the spoilers on Wikipedia.
Yep.
So yesterday I was reading an old article in the New Yorker about David Rees, a.k.a. Kid Midas. It was about his book, How to Sharpen Pencils, which he described as an emotional memoir disguised as a how-to manual. Basically, David Rees wrote an obsessively detailed book about how to sharpen pencils in the aftermath of his divorce. And by the way, that's the type of shit that I'm looking for in a video gaming channel So if anybody knows of anything like that, or is going through a divorce or another traumatic life change and is looking for a way to process some of it, there's an idea. So one paragraph from the article really stood out to me. Okay, it says, the book also recalls, at times, the work of the Aleppo Group, the fraternity of experimental francophone writers who are especially fond of imposing odd restrictions on their work as a way of provoking creative ingenuity. Georges Perec's novel Avoid was written entirely without use of the letter E. Raymond Queneau's Exercises in Style recounts the same insignificant incident 99 times using 99 different styles of narration. This is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of thing I've been talking about. I'm sorry that it took me 5 episodes to get around to reading that article. Today's episode of The Last Podcast featured the voices of Max Wallace and Jake McKay. I also think Shoshana Orion Little was in there a little bit. There she is. I want to thank some supporters, too, right now. Thank you, Lucas Turfors, Christopher Ungurian, Delia Rojas, Nadav Murad, Emma Harcum, Lucas Ackerman, Kevin Askew, Trevin Savage, Chloe Bazinet, Jordan Anderson Highland, Aiden Ghosh, Nicholas Pavo, and Paulina Wilson. Next time on The Last Podcast, we've got a sequel to an episode that we recorded in May, which is your first clue. And that one's pretty long, so I might give you a week or two to digest all of it. We'll be back with more episodes after that, though. Got some weird stuff planned. It's going to be fun. Thanks for listening.